have a little bit of an worry or an impatience to figure out what's going to happen. Like waiting for the shoe to fall or something. Not sure what I can do. Not sure if a way is going to open or if I have to pry it open or what. Out of Africa, dear. Because Africa is the worst place to be right now. Because Africa is not the continent that gave birth to humanity. The continent that gave birth to humanity actually is the dangerously artfully designed to withstand the pressure of the time. In order to mine the minerals of the earth. So the birth of humanity was actually in the band of land that stretched from sea to sea, because the Meso American plateau was where humans were born into this world. It is where the Anunnaki set up shop, you would say. I got to look that up, okay? Mesoamerican. Okay, so we're talking about Mesoamerica and not Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia. Right. A lot of people are confused, actually, about the origins of humanity. And they do not understand that Mesopotamia is not where humanity first lived with the Anunnaki, nor in Africa, where they cast out like seeds upon the continent. The original humans that became the modern humans were, of course, of different lineage. And there was the Elohim, the kindred, and the ones they called the hybrids, you see, because they had the two basic breeds, you might say, and they created a third because they wondered if they could enhance the intelligence and dexterity of the kindred enough to make them more flexible in their thinking and capable of higher level chores that required more dexterity. And this effort resulted in a breed that was the seed of modern humanity. However, the hybrids were not the choice of the Anunnaki. They were the inspiration of the Elohim as a way to enable a breakthrough in the standoff between both breeds, you see. Now, it was not intended in the beginning that these hybrids would be mistaken for the trailblazers. Is that what you're saying? That's correct. They would be mistaken for the trailblazers that resulted in modern humanity. Initially, the hybrids were created as a way to change the options or the kindred so that the kindred could survive because they would have children who had features that were more susceptible of success on the planet as they could handle both higher level chores and they could outthink their parents, so to speak, in a way that would help them to enhance their ability to innovate a way to solve all the problems that they were having because the kindred were dying at that time, as you know. There were very few of them left comparatively, just a handful, and they were going to end up as another dead end species, you might say. And the kindred would have been able to inherit the earth because they had the skills, the intelligence, and the dexterity to do what they needed to do to survive. However, the kindred were their children, you see. The kindred were the children of the Anunnaki, of course, because the Anunnaki created them and gave them some of their own DNA. But they were the children of the Elohim in the sense that the Elohim had been required to teach them and train them to do their jobs and to make sure they were taken care of. So the Elohim had the first responsibility for mankind, you see, to make sure that mankind would survive and thrive. And when the Anunnaki went away, there became a swirl of activity that would have released all those souls back to me. And I didn't know what to do with them. What was I going to do with all these souls that were coming back to heaven? Because by then they all had individuated souls. What would I do with them? Where would I put them? It would not work to put them back in the gorillas, as they were called in that day, even though they were actually chimpanzees. It was spoken of as the gorilla family rather than the ape family in that day. So would I put them back in the body of a chimpanzee, which would be pretty sad for them. It really would, because they would have all this soul energy that would encourage them to act out in a different way than the other chimpanzees, and they would probably kill them anyway because they would see them as too strange to be part of the chimpanzee groupings. So what was I to do with them? I did not know what to do with them. And so when the inspiration came to me that maybe we could blend the two and make them continue to procreate, then there would be a place for the souls of the kindred. So from the beginning, the idea was that there would be another species for the souls of those who were coming to heaven. It wasn't a problem for the Elohim because as they arrived, they reproduced numbers that were essentially the same all the time. Occasionally there would be some mishap and they would lose members at an accelerated rate, and then they would have more children to make it up so that the souls would return into the families. And the Elohim were very keen to the idea of this soul trajectory, and therefore they like to maintain a balance of energy between the physical and the spiritual, so that there would always be a body for the souls that left from the group, you see, because they had been through so much pain and suffering through their travels when they had to be captured in the physical forms of other animals or species that were very, very ill adapted to their soul energy, you see. So they were aware of this, and so they always maintained a certain number of individuals who would make the system work like a charm. However, the kindred had no idea how this worked. And when they hybrids appeared on the earth, because the Elohim were inspired by me, of course, to work with the kindred to create the modern human, you might say, although the first results were very varied, of course, because of the differences in DNA. It started a trend, you might say. Okay, God, so the stories I've heard, the reason they had different reasons for doing this, they viewed them as their children, etc., and they wanted to help them. They didn't want to see them die out. Did the Elohim understand that your dilemma of what would happen with these souls that were left over? Yes, they did. They understood that. That if they allowed the physical bodies of the kindred to become extinct, then their souls would be forced to reincarnate in different forms that would cause a lot of pain and suffering for them. So they were aware of the pain and suffering of the children, that they could not stay in heaven. And this was a big factor in the decisions that they came to, a big factor. Okay. Life on Earth or humanity is extremely important to me. However, after the Anunnaki left, humanity went through a period of great darkness indeed. The Elohim were okay because they found a way to live together in peace and harmony. However, the kindred were very, very brutal because they did not have the intelligence to see that the importance of the guardians, you see, because the Elohim were their guardians. And they tried to help them over and over again. But the kindred were very, very dangerous. And they would kill the Elohim because they blamed them for their existence, you see. They blamed the Elohim for their existence. And they had come to be this species that was left high and dry when the Anunnaki went away. Because when the Anunnaki went away, and the Elohim did not blow them away, they didn't know what to do because they were accustomed to working hard just to stay alive, you see. And this is how convoluted it became, Stephanie, that they trusted on working only under the Anunnaki because they wanted to stay alive. They wanted to continue to have life, you see. When the Anunnaki went away, they didn't want to work anymore. They didn't like working, of course, down in the mines or even the ones that worked above ground and had to work from dawn to dusk. And they enjoyed their time playing, just like they had when they were children, because when they were children, of course, they were allowed to play and have a happy childhood. So they returned to a childlike state where they could just play all day. And of course, they could not survive that way. They had to figure out how to feed themselves and clothe themselves and etc. And all the efforts the Elohim made came to naught because the kindred were not gifted with enough intelligence to see that the Elohim were their guardians and not their captors. And they came to blame the Elohim the way children do when they would say, well, you made me, you're responsible for me. You made me, you're responsible for me. If you don't take care of me, then it's your fault. You're the one that has to take care of me. Why did you make me anyway if you thought that I had to work and I was supposed to do this? It's your fault I was born. It's your fault I was born. And they retreated into this infantile state. And they have hardly progressed in the time since the Anunnaki left. They have hardly progressed at all. And the reason they have hardly progressed is because they've had it too easy, you see. They have had it too easy. Now, the hybrid children of the Elohim and the kindred allowed for more dexterity and more intelligence. However, the souls that inhabited them were still governed by their history, you see, and therefore, eventually, as there came to be forms of humanity that were very, very, very similar to each other with a few differences in their skin color and their shape of their hands, etc., there arose a being who chose a different way. He chose a different way, and he said, I'm not going to play this way anymore. I'm just not going to play this way anymore. And he became known as a prophet, you see, because he said to the kindred, who were now in the bodies of the hybrids, the modern humans, you're still behaving like infants. And if you don't change your ways, then you will be swallowed up in the rising sea. So wake up and start treating each other with love and respect, and not as if you were enemies. And of course, the souls that occupied the bodies responded according to their want. The Elohim understood it. However, they were already being forced to engage in hard labor, etc., because of the power of the warlords, you might say, because the hybrids that became known as the Nephilim were growing what we call egos. They were growing egos when they thought they were the power of the throne, you might say. And they did not trust on God. They did not trust on me because they had such power in their communities because of their added intelligence and dexterity that they began to act out in a way against even their own parents, you might say. And they created various lineages that had a lot of power, and they would subdue the others, including the Elohim, because the Elohim, that is the ones that were in the bodies of the new humans, were not given to violence, you see. They just were not given to violence. And so they were easily subdued and used as slaves, you see. And so they became the slave tribes that were so intelligent that the others could depend on them to take care of them, you see. And so they had their servants who would provide for them. And the Nephilim, who were so egotistical that they believed that they were gods, you see, began to treat the other humans in a most horrendous way. And that included their own kind, of course. That is to say, those who had the hybrid bodies, because the first ones to get the power would pass it on to their lineage and not share it, you see, because they become very, very jealous of each other and they hated each other with a passion. And so they would fight each other for control over a little bit of land. And so that continued for quite a long while. And of course, you are aware of the fiefdoms and etc. in Europe, and that is a vestige of this time when the Nephilim fought among themselves in a most horrendous way. The adoration of the one who came to be the Son of the one who remembered me in the way that he would talk to others, one day said, "Hey, why are we behaving this way? Why are we behaving this way? We need to give the people an opportunity to grow. And how are they going to grow?" And this was my dilemma too, you see, because as long as they were egotistical and they believed that they were the ones who got to decide the fate of others and did not trust on me, then I had to be relegated to the bystander, you see, because they would not listen to me. This is very important because you listen to me and you talk to me. And there are a few others on earth who have a various degree of ability to communicate with me. And they hear what I have to say. And sometimes they share it with others, and sometimes they just keep it to themselves because they know that others won't understand. And sometimes they are regarded as insane, as you know, when I try to talk to them. Others regard them as insane, and they regard themselves as insane as well because it has been such a long spell since the Elohim lost the capacity to communicate with me that when it happens, you see, to any of my children, they think it is a demon, or else it is, in modern language, insanity. But it's the same thing as you noted before, whether they treat it as insanity or the possession by a demon, it's the same thing, just the different words, right? Yes, I saw that. And so they have not matured. In spite of their scientific prowess, they have not evolved spiritually, and they still behave in the same old way. In some circles, they call it debate, where they have to decimate their opponent, you see, through their ability to destroy them through their talk. This is like saying that they have come to see that the physical violence is very destructive, and so they now call it debate. Let's debate this issue and see who wins. This is the same type of egotistical desire to be the supreme ruler that afflicted the Nephilim when they were created. And so their souls absorbed that history, you see. So now they have the history that came to them through the ages because they were still so young that they were shaped by their experiences, and their experiences have shaped their souls, you see. And so their souls have a very, very difficult time when they are challenged to let go of the ego, you see, because they say, oh no, we can't let go of the ego. That's the way it works. The ego is necessary for humanity to survive because they don't understand. They just don't understand. And so they can't let it go, and they can't trust on me. They can't return to reality. You see, they live in a dark mind that they inherited from the Anunnaki, who forced them down into those dark nights.